you see the manifestations. It's like you could be going through these things and you might not realize that the cause is emotional. Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to be presenting the concept of love made hungry. And this was a theory posited by Ronald Fairbairn, a renowned psychoanalyst who went into a lot of detail regarding schizoid psychology. So before we get into this, I just want to say that a lot of schizoids aren't actually aware of their need for love. And as I go through this video, you'll be able to understand fully why that is. The issue of love is a very sort of tricky issue for schizoids. As many people may be aware, schizoids' main issue is with emotional intimacy and connection with others and emotional detachment in social situations and difficulties with interpersonal relationships. Schizoids often have a preference for solitude. Love made hungry. So psychoanalyst Ronald Fairbairn explored this concept extensively. He argued that when a child's need for the mother's love and attention is frustrated, the child's desire becomes an all-consuming hunger. This unmet need can lead to a fear of devouring the object of desire, the mother. The child feels a desperate need to incorporate the mother fully to ensure she cannot be taken away. This intense craving sets the stage for a lifelong struggle with relationships. Usually it's the mother, but this is related to the primary caregiver, so it's whichever person is predominantly responsible for caring for the child. With Love Made Hungry, it creates a very strong desire for emotional connection when love is absent in the early relationship between the child, and I'm going to say mother throughout this video for simplicity. It creates an incorporative attitude towards the desired love object. A contented baby is able to suck and then let go, knowing that the breast will be available again. A schizoid baby, on the other hand, wants to swallow the whole breast out of fear that it won't be available when needed, leading to an omnivorous urge. Schizoid individuals struggle with a fear of losing their love object or object of desire, leading to a deep need to incorporate it completely. This fear originates from early experiences with an inconsistent mother's breast, creating a lifelong pattern of withdrawal and rejection to avoid the pain of unmet needs. This doesn't have to be actually the mother's actual breast, because some people are obviously bottle fed, but basically it's babies, they associate care and nurturing with the feeding process. So when they're hungry and their needs are met and the mother comes and she soothes them and feeds them, then it gives them a sense of security. However, like if the child goes through some sort of neglect or inconsistent caregiving, then the child doesn't know like when the mother's going to return, or can't be certain that the mother's going to respond to their needs. Individuals with schizoid tendencies experience this love made hungry phenomenon in a particularly acute way. They have an intense need for love and connection, but simultaneously fear the destructiveness of their own desires. This fear often leads to withdrawal and isolation. They avoid relationships to protect themselves and others from the perceived danger of their insatiable need. So with this then, it's like because the infant feels that they literally want to swallow their mother and take her inside, and they have such an intense need to hold on to her and possess her and consume her, then this becomes fearful to the child, because obviously if they were to do that, then they wouldn't have a mother anymore. They would literally then destroy her. And so because of this, they fear like this intense desire, and definitely their needs wouldn't be getting met. This creates a terrible dilemma for schizoid individuals. Their profound hunger for love and connection conflicts with their fear of being overwhelmed or overwhelming others. They feel caught in a cycle where seeking relationships feels too dangerous, yet living without them feels empty and isolated. The fear of being overwhelmed or overwhelming others. So this intense need they feel could be potentially harmful to their mother. And also because they have these strong emotions, they feel that they're going to be consumed by their own emotions of desire. It's like a double-edged sword in a way, because it's like this intense desire and need feels like a threat to themselves, and it feels like a threat to others. And so what would usually happen is that the infant will then detach and withdraw from their emotions to protect themselves from their own feelings, and also to protect their mother from the threat that they think their feelings has the potential to cause. This will become more clearer as I go on, because there's a lot of points to make here. Fairbairn posited that there are two main responses or reactions to unrequited love. First is the depressive reaction, and the second is the schizoid reaction. Most people will have the depressive reaction. I'll go through it, then both, and then I'll give some further explanation as to how this works. With the depressive reaction, the trigger is they desire love from another person who will not give it. The response is anger and aggression towards the unresponsive person, who could be called the bad object, which just means a bad mental representation of the person. So the behavior is similar to a child's temper tantrum when denied something by the mother. The individual may attempt to force the bad object to become good by aggressive means. Consequence: this aggression can lead to fear of destroying the very person that they love, resulting in guilt and ultimately depression. So with a depressive reaction, the individual perceives the other person as a bad object who is actively refusing or withholding love, leading to feelings of anger and aggression. The individual fears that their hate might ruin the relationship with the needed and loved person. With this infant's response, they are externalizing their feelings towards the mother and feeling aggression and hatred towards her for not meeting their needs. And then because they feel this aggression and hatred towards her, they then feel bad that they're thinking that this hate, what they feel that they want to do could be destructive to their mother if they lash out or they attack, and that, it could cause negative repercussions. And then the mother may not then, be receptive to their needs, or that, there'll be bad consequences from this. They fear that their hate could destroy the person that they love, but this is very much an externalized process. So we'll go over to the schizoid reaction. So the trigger is an inability to obtain love from the desired person. The response is, rather than getting angry, the individual experiences a growing hunger, a painful craving, and a deep longing for total possession of the love object. The behavior is that the craving and longing for the love object becomes overwhelming, leading to a desire for total and complete possession to avoid the pain of unfulfilled need. As a consequence, the intense desire and craving lead a schizoid individual to withdraw emotionally and psychologically to protect themselves from perceived threat of their own need. Schizoid reaction, the individual is more focused on their own internal experience of longing and craving. They may not necessarily see the other person as actively refusing love, but rather feel an overwhelming need that they might be too intense or destructive. You can see with the schizoid reaction that it's a lot more of an internalized psychological experience. So they're not externalizing emotions and hate towards a mother. And part of the reason for this lack of externalization compared with the depressive reaction is that the schizoid reaction occurs at a point which is earlier in development. So they haven't really got to the point where they've been able to connect with the expression of emotions, which comes a little bit later in the child's development. When the schizoid reaction takes place and they withdraw and disconnect from emotionally so that they don't have to feel this deep craving and this unfulfillment, they don't really develop to the point where they can externalize aggression. When they feel that their love that their love and their need might be too much for the caregiver, this need is suppressed and detached from, so they don't go through the process of developing the aggression further to actually get to the point where they're externalizing their emotions. You can see the main difference here. Depressive reaction is very externalizing towards others, whereas with the schizoid reaction, it's disconnection and internalization towards the self. What influences the schizoid withdrawal? We've already talked about the mother inconsistently meeting the infant's needs. We'll go on. When a mother fails to mirror the infant's emotions or responds negatively with anger, frustration, or indifference, the infant might perceive their own emotions as bad or harmful. The infant learns that their emotional expressions lead to negative outcomes, internalizing the belief that their feelings are harmful. If the mother frequently responds to the infant's needs with irritation, rejection, or punishment, the infant may feel that their needs and actions are causing distress or harm to the mother. The baby will naturally feel drawn towards love and affection from the mothers for purposes of security, especially when they're very young, they're very vulnerable, they have a lot of anxiety and fears, and so they seek comfort. The baby would express this through crying. So if, for example, baby cries, the mother's angry, maybe she shouts at the baby, or maybe she just disconnects, she's emotionally unavailable and isn't really very interested in the baby crying. Their emotions then seem not only just not useless, but they seem bad. And plus, they've got a lot of fear and anxiety within them anyway, and there's not really any positive emotional relationship developing with the mother. And so, what emotions they do have, they very much want to detach and withdraw from. This is how the environment and the mother's responses will influence the baby. How this manifestations of schizoid withdrawal. Linking needs to distress. The infant may begin to associate their need for attention or care with causing the mother's distress, leading to the belief that they are the cause of the mother's distress. Protective withdrawal. To avoid causing further distress, the infant may begin to withdraw emotionally, learning to suppress their needs and emotions to protect the mother and themselves. Fear of rejection. The fear of being rejected or causing harm leads to a cycle of emotional withdrawal and detachment. Suppressed emotions. Early withdrawal involves suppressing emotions to protect oneself from potential harm or rejection. This suppression can impede the natural development of emotional regulation skills, which are necessary for experiencing and expressing complex emotions like guilt. The baby gets emotionally stunted in this situation and doesn't develop the full spectrum of emotions. All babies are born, well, most babies are born with the capacity for experiencing proto-emotions. Proto-emotions can include fear, feeling satisfied, dissatisfied. They're very sort of generalized sort of feelings that are necessary for survival. The infant is going to get more stuck on this proto-emotional phase if they don't connect with and process their emotions consciously. The psychological stance of love made hungry. Well, we've talked about schizoids wanting to consume, like feeling they wanted to really consume and possess their mother when their needs are not being met. So this is called an incorporative attitude. They have a deep-seated need to incorporate or consume what they desire completely to avoid losing it. This stems from an early fear that what they need, like the mother's breast, will be taken away before they're satisfied. And this leads on to a hunger for people. Their physical hunger often masks a deeper emotional hunger for connection and love, which they fear expressing. These always have a very strong, unsatisfied need for love. This need makes them want to incorporate and monopolize those they love. The anxiety is so overwhelming that they feel the need to withdraw from relationships entirely. And by this, I mean emotionally detached, not like they can't mingle with anyone. Emotionally detached from relationships. They fear losing their independence and sense of self if they engage in relationships. Relationships are seen as too dangerous to enter into, and the schizoid person may seek security by avoiding relationships altogether. So I made a video on the fear of engulfment because that is another facet of the schizoidal experience and the fear of losing autonomy and being engulfed by the other person energetically. I'm not going to go into that now because I just want to focus on the love made hunger, but that's what the fear of losing their independence and sense of self, that's what that relates to. So how does this love made hungry manifest in a schizoid's everyday life? There's several different ways that it may manifest, and some of the ways are physical ailments. Schizoid individuals might experience various psychosomatic symptoms as a result of their intense unmet emotional needs. These can include chronic fatigue, gastrointestinal issues, headaches, or other physical manifestations of stress and emotional turmoil. Emotional eating. The intense unmet need for love might lead to a dysfunctional eating habit, such as overeating or undereating as a way to cope with emotional hunger. Food can become a substitute for emotional nourishment. Social isolation. Schizoid individuals often withdraw from social interactions to protect themselves from the anxiety and the perceived destructiveness of their emotions. This withdrawal can lead to physical isolation and a lack of social support, which in turn affects their physical health. Acute anxiety. So the internal conflict between the desire for love and the fear of its destructiveness can result in acute anxiety or panic attacks. These physical symptoms are expressions of the underlying emotional tension and fear. Neglect of physical health. The preoccupation with their internal emotional world and the detachment from outer reality can lead schizoid individuals to neglect their physical health. They may fail to engage in regular physical activity, maintain a healthy diet, or seek medical care when needed. And self-medication. Schizoid individuals may turn to substances such as alcohol, drugs, or other addictive behaviors to self-medicate. These substances can provide temporary relief from anxiety, depression, and the feelings of worthlessness that can often accompany their condition. What can happen is that this anxiety within this turmoil, it can create a certain degree of internal angst. And what happens is that the schizoid will use their defenses to try to distance themselves from this angst. And so if they have a high degree of emotional detachment or dissociation, they're going to end up feeling empty inside. And beneath this emptiness is a hunger, but they may not be really conscious of it as a hunger for love. So it can manifest as a physical hunger, or as something missing, or a hole, or something that needs to be filled within. It can feel like a vacuum, and that is going back to the baby with the hunger, with the emotional hunger related to the feeding. This is really about emotional deprivation. And so physically, there can be a real emptiness. And this is where the concept of the empty core comes from. Schizoids will live in their heads. And I will talk about this a little later on, actually. Individuals with schizoid tendencies experience this love-made hungry phenomenon in a particularly acute way. They have an intense need for love and connection, but simultaneously fear the destructiveness of their own desires. This often leads to withdrawal and isolation. They avoid relationships, or I should say intimate relationships, to protect themselves and others from the perceived danger of their insatiable need. So back to what I was saying about the empty core. So schizoid defense is going to make them more live in their heads and not in their emotions, because there's a lot of turmoil in the emotional realm. They're going to detach from emotions and live in their head. So they're going to engage in a lot of introspection, fantasy, and sometimes like theory, logical thinking, so that they don't really have to go into the feeling. This is something that is going to happen as an adaptive strategy, and it's going to set in, and so it's not like they're going to be like at war with their emotions or anything like that. The emotions are going to be detached from. And so this explains a lot of things about why schizoids have difficulty with emotional intimacy, why they have things like alexithymia, and this means an inability to read or connect with their own emotions, and why they don't develop the full spectrum of emotions, and why emotions can seem muted, and at the same time why they could have actually very strong emotions beneath that, but because of the detachment they're not really going into it. But when they do go into the emotions, it could be quite really consuming and overwhelming. So there's a difficulty with emotional regulation. So they avoid emotions, so they don't learn to manage or deal with or understand emotions in the way that someone who didn't develop the defense of detachment and withdrawal, didn't go through the process of learning to detach from their emotions in order to protect themselves. So the true self stays protected through emotional detachment, and through the schizoid defense, that a schizoid individual is able to stay at a safe distance. I think it's important to talk about the schizoid dilemma because there is this underlying desire to connect with people, and yet there is the fear of getting too close involved or losing one's autonomy in a relationship. And there's different ways that a schizoid can deal with this. I talked in the fear of involvement about the master-slave relationship. So some schizoids, they will play like a very compliant role in relationships. Schizoids adopt a social persona when dealing with other people. And for some people, some schizoids, it's going to be quite a compliant role just to get on, just to come across as good-natured, to get by with other people. And when a schizoid individual is not in touch with their needs, they're not going to be able to really assert their needs within a relationship. So the other person's needs will tend to take precedence. However, there is a way around this, that some schizoids could actually be quite controlling in relationships. So the master slave is like the schizoid doesn't always play the slave role. Like sometimes we can play the master role and deal with it that way so that we don't we're not subjected to other people's emotional needs, and that we can be in a position where we feel in control and things are happening on our terms in a way that we feel comfortable with. So I will make a video about that. But I really wanted to talk about Love Made Hungry because it is a key psychological concept. A lot of schizoids are totally unaware that they have any need for love. And I think it's because this phenomenon happened at an age that was so young, that it's before we had any consciousness of what's going on. So we just like wake up in the world like this and we just think like, oh, yeah, this is just how I am. But really there were things going on before consciousness. And for some schizoids, because there is a spectrum, some are more aware of their emotions and emotional needs, and others are like just really very disconnected and just really don't feel like they have emotional needs or this hunger. And so the fact that it can be unconscious in a lot of schizoids means that it can affect our lives without us really knowing. Like you see the manifestations, it's like you could be going through these things and you might not realize that the cause is emotional, because you're just going to feel like hungry or empty or void. And the last thing you might be thinking of is, oh, this is an emotional issue, you know, because it's not, like, emotions are not going to be at the forefront of the mind because of the defense mechanisms. This internal conflict is something that may not come to consciousness. It just might manifest as this underlying sort of odd feeling that you can't really put your finger on, you know. So yeah, I think that's all I'm going to say on this for now. I may revisit it because there is actually a lot more to this than what I'm saying. I have presented a very simplified version. You've got these other terms and concepts that feed into the Love Made Hungry. But for now, I think I've conveyed the basic concept and how it manifests in schizoid lives, and I've said the key important points related to it so that you can get an idea. These sort of issues can be addressed in therapy, where I think they're gonna try to get you in touch with your emotions, and also I think to recognize your needs and that you do have needs, and also like more healthy ways in order to get your needs met without having this imbalance, like master slave relationship situations going on. I think the goal would be to have a level mutual connection with someone. So yeah, that's what I got to say, and hope that was clear, and I'll see you in the next video.